Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel dedicated to Java backend interview preparation. This is the second video in our Spring Boot interview questions playlist. If you haven't watched the first video yet, we covered the basic fundamental and essential interview questions on Spring Boot in the first video. You can check that out in the playlist. In today's video, we will dive deep into the one of the most frequently asked topics in Spring Boot interviews, which is annotations. I'll be presenting a series of real interview questions on Spring Boot annotations along with concise, interview focused answers to help you prepare effectively. Make sure to watch the complete video to understand all the important annotations in the Spring Boot from an interview perspective. Let's get started. First question can be asked on the most basic annotation of Spring Boot, which is @Spring Boot application annotation. So the Spring Boot application annotation is equivalent to using @configuration, @enable auto configuration, and @component scan with their default attributes. Spring Boot enables the developer to use a single annotation instead of using multiple annotations. It is used on class having the main method. Next question can be asked, explain the difference between @controller and REST controller. So @controller maps object to view or template and make it human readable, whereas @REST controller is a combination of @controller and response body annotations. It is used for creating a RESTful controller. It converts the response to JSON or XML. It ensures that the data returned by each method will be returned straight into the response body instead of returning a template. Next question can be explained @configuration, @enable auto configuration, and @component scan annotation. So first, @enable auto configuration. So it enables the Spring Boot's auto configuration mechanism. Second, @component scan. So it enables to scan all the classes annotated with Spring class annotations such as component, service, entity, repository, etc. Configuration. It denotes that the class is the root class for the configuration of the bean. It allows us to register extra beans in the context or import additional configuration classes. This is one of the important question and annotation. Explain auto-wired annotation and state the use of it. So auto-wired annotation is used to wire the beans together. It internally creates object. So we do not have to create object by using the new keyword. It is used for automatic dependency injection. It eases the mocking process in unit testing. It can be used on fields and parameters. So it is important to note that whatever annotation we are preparing, we should be aware that where it can be used, whether it can be applied on fields or parameters or method or class level. Next important annotation is value annotation. So it is used to read the values in Java classes from the property files. For example, @value, then we have to give a double quotes dollar, then a curly braces, and here it should be the name of property. For example, if we want to get the port, then we can use server.port here, and we are storing it in the value, and then this value can be used in the Java program. This annotation can be used on fields and or parameters. Next important question is difference between component and service annotation. So component annotation is a generic stereotype annotation for any Spring managed component. You can mark it to any class as a bean regardless of its role in the application. It simply tells Spring manage this class as a bean without specifying what kind of bean it is. But @service is a specialization of component annotation. It is intended for classes that hold business logic or represent the service layer of your application. While it functions identically to add component in terms of bean registration, using @service provides clearer intent and makes your code base more readable and maintainable. And it can help with things like aspect-oriented programming, point cuts, targeting service beans. Internally, @service annotation is itself annotated with @component, making it a specialized form of component. Next can be asked difference between @component and repository. So @component annotation we have already seen in the earlier question. So we will directly skip to at the rate repository. So at the rate repository is a specialization of component annotation again, which is specifically intended for persistence layer. It marks a class as a data access object, which we also call as DAO, or repository, which is responsible for encapsulating storage, retrieval, and search behavior typically against a database. So while service was not providing any extra features, at the rate repository provides automatic exception translation. It catches persistence related exceptions and rethrows them as a Spring's unified unchecked exceptions, making error handling more consistent. So it throws unchecked exceptions, so we are not obligated to handle it using try and catch block. Next question can be difference between at the rate configuration and at the rate component. So we are already aware about the component annotation, but at the rate configuration is a specialized form of component annotation again, which is designed to specifically used on classes that define bean configuration using methods annotated with at the rate bean. It indicates that the class contains bean definitions and Spring will process it to generate and manage those beans at runtime. Importantly, at the configuration classes uses sigillib proxying to ensure that calls between @bean method return the same Spring manage bean singleton instance, preserving the dependencies and singleton behavior. So what happens if we declare @bean method inside a component class? So Spring does not proxy the class. So calling one @bean method from another will create a new instance each time and not a singleton managed by Spring. With configuration, such method calls always return the Spring managed singleton version. Now explain bean annotation. This can also be asked. So it is used to declare a method as a bean definition in a configuration class. This we have already seen in the earlier slide. This means that when the Spring container executes the annotated method, it registers the return value as a bean within a bean factory. By default, the bean name will be the same as the method name, but you can customize it by using the name or value attribute on the bean annotation. So we are having one example of it. So this is a app config class. It is having configuration annotation, and it is having one method named as myBean class, and it is annotated with @bean. So the return value here is myBean class. So this return value will be marked as a bean within a bean factory. Now another question on bean can be asked is explain scopes of bean and what is the default scope. So in Spring Boot, beans can be created in six different scopes. First is singleton scope. So this is the default scope. So this answers the second question. This is the default scope in Spring. When a bean is defined within a singleton scope, the container creates a singleton instance of that bean and all requests for that bean name will return the same object. Second is prototype scope. So a new bean instance is created every time a request is made for that bean. Third is request scope. It creates only a single instance will be created and available during the complete lifecycle of an HTTP request. Session scope. Only a single instance will be created and available during the complete lifecycle of a HTTP session. Application scope. Only a single instance will be created and available during the lifecycle of a servlet context. WebSocket scope. Only a singleton instance will be created and available during the complete lifecycle of a WebSocket. These are the six scopes of the bean, and the default one is singleton. Now these two are again very important annotation from the interview point of view. @post construct and @pdestroy. So @post construct. So Spring calls the methods annotated with @post construct only once, just after the initialization of the bean. Keep in mind that these methods will run even if there is nothing to initialize, and the method which is annotated at post construct can have any access level but can't be static. So we are having one example of it here. In the we have one method which is named as post construct and it is marked with post construct annotation, which is creating one user and saving that user. Similarly, pre-destroy, Spring calls it once just before the Spring removes our bean from the application context. And again, this can also have any access level, but it cannot be static. So here we can see we are using pre-destroy on the pre-destroy method, which is closing the DB connection. So basically it is used for cleanup activities. Explain qualifier annotation. This is again important annotation from interview perspective. The qualifier annotation in Spring Boot is used to resolve ambiguity when we have multiple beans of same type, but we want to inject a specific one. So if we are having 5 classes which are implementing a single interface, which is int authentication DAO, and we want to inject authentication RDBMS IMPL class, then we can use qualifier annotation like below. So qualifier, we are giving the class name here which we want to specifically inject. We are using AutoWired for dependency injection. Here we are using the name of interfaces and we are not using the name of the class, and we are setting the variable for it. It can be used on fields or parameters only. Next is explain conditional annotation. So conditional annotation control whether a bean should be created based on certain conditions. Example includes conditional on class, conditional on property, conditional on bean, etc. Next, one of the important question from the interview perspective in Spring Boot is what is the purpose of transactional annotation? So transactional manages database transactions. It ensures that all operations within a method either complete successfully or roll back if any exception occurs. It can be used on class level or method level. Now this is again very important question. What are different propagation types for transactional annotation? So Spring's transactional annotation supports several propagation types that define how transactions behave when multiple transaction methods interact. Here are the main types. First is required. So it joins the current transaction if one exists, otherwise creates a new transaction. Requires new. It suspends any existing transaction and always starts a new one. Supports run within a transaction if one exists, otherwise executes non-transactionally. Not supported. Suspends any existing transaction and run non-transactionally. Mandatory. Must run within an existing transaction. Throws an exception if none exist. Never. Must run outside of a transaction. Throws an exception if a transaction exists. Nested. Runs within a nested transaction if a current transaction exists using safe points, otherwise behave like required. So these are some of the propagation types which can be used with the transaction annotation. So at least 5 of them you should know. Now this is one of the important question which was asked to me personally. What if we are using transactional annotation on a method, but in case of failure we want to commit a single db update or insert or delete? How to handle this condition? So the answer of this question is we can create a specific separate method with transactional, and propagation is requires new. So we have seen earlier what it does. So for specific operation that we want to commit, regardless of the outcome of the main transaction, this will ensure that the specific operation is executed in its own transaction. So here is the example of it, that it is a service class. It is having transactional annotation, and uh, in the after the catch block we are calling one method commit specific operation. So at the rate transactional, this commit specific operation is marked with at the rate transactional annotation. Propagation types is propagation requires new. So this will commit even if the main operation fails. So this is how we can commit one single insert update delete in cases of failure. This is again important question, difference between get mapping and request mapping. So request mapping can be used with get, post, put and other request methods using the method attribute on the annotation, and also it can be applied to both classes and method level. Whereas get mapping is an extension of request mapping which helps improve clarity on the request, and it can only be applied at method level. Next question can be asked is difference between response body and request body annotation. By using request body annotation, we will get our values mapped with the model we have created in our system for handling any specific call, and it is used on parameters only. While at the rate response body, you can with the help of response body we can send anything back to the place from where the request was generated. Both things will be mapped easily without writing any custom parser. It can be used on methods only. Next question can be asked is different between path variable and request parameters. So path variable extracts the value embedded directly in the URI path. For example, user slash 42. 42 is a path variable and can be accessed using path variable id int id in your controller method. At the rate request param extracts the value from the query string, that is the part of the URL after the question mark. So for example, in slash users question mark country equal to India. So country equal to India is a request parameter and can be accessed using at the rate request param country string country. And both path variable and request param can be applied only on parameters. Next question is, can the value of path variable be null? So no, the value of path variable path parameter in Spring Boot cannot be null. If a path variable is missing in the URL, Spring will not map the request to the controller method, resulting in a 404 error. However, we can make the path variable optional by configuring our endpoint to accept URLs both with and without the path variable. For that, we have to do path variable required as false. Or there is one other operation, we can one other method, we can create two separate endpoints, one configured with the path variable and other one without it. Thanks for watching. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more content on Spring Boot and Java interview preparation. In the upcoming videos, we will be covering more important Spring Boot topics such as exception handling, caching and much more. So stay tuned. Feel free to leave your questions or suggestions in the comment below. See you in the next video.